Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Krasko, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hey there, welcome back to the Stepmom Side Podcast. A question I get often, but not like super crazy often, but one that I'm like, you know what, let me just go ahead and record a podcast episode about this is, why did I start coaching stepmoms? Why did I build the Stepmom Side Community? And why did I hit record on this podcast? I'll give you a little spoiler alert. It wasn't because everything was sunshine and roses. But today I want to share with you my why, the messy, the raw, and the real truth behind why I do what I do. Because if you're here and you're listening, I know that you've had these moments too. The ones where you're like, what the hell did I sign up for? So let's get into it. Let's start at the bottom because that's where my why was born. So rock bottom for me was not long after we'd gotten married. It was when everything came to a head and I realized that I was just in over my head. I couldn't just push through and make it work. I couldn't just keep trying and hoping that everything would work out because it wasn't. So if you're like me, and I've talked about this before, you're one of those women that is very ambitious, very driven, very like, I'm just going to figure this out. Like, I will persevere. Like, life is challenging, but you know what? Like, watch me. I can do this. But here's the thing. I was angry that I didn't know that I'd signed up for all of this craziness, like as a stepmom. I knew that like my husband had kids and like an ex-wife and all of the things, but like I didn't realize like how freaking hard that this was going to be. So I was Googling how to get divorced pretty much on the daily. It was a wild ride. Let's just say that. Now, don't get me wrong. I still am absolutely crazy about my husband, but I was also blindsided by the theatrics of being a stepmom. Blended family, as you know, because you're here and you're listening to this, isn't for the weak. Everyone stumbles. And I, say like, you know what, definitely check on your strong friends, but especially as a stepmom, like check on your strong friend because holy shit. So here's the shift of how I got from like that to where I am now. So remember how I said it's hard for me to ask for help? Well, I felt like I had two options. I could either stay or leave. And if you're like me, you too also aren't just like a quitter. You're just not going to be like, okay, this sucks. I'm out. See you later. I like a challenge, but this was much more of a challenge than I had wanted. And so I finally had to admit that I needed help. Like I couldn't do it alone. When we really, because we got outside help, we did marriage counseling. When we got the outside help, things changed. Not immediately, but slowly. I didn't realize like the parts that I played in a lot of the things. I didn't realize, and you've heard me say this before in podcast episodes, if you're rolling my eyes like, oh my gosh, I did too when I heard this too. But I didn't realize like how my own childhood factored into how I was showing up as a stepmom, how I was navigating conflict or like how I was avoiding conflict with my husband or just like different mindsets that I had. So those are the kinds of things that I learned like when we got outside help. And so like the Stepmom Side coach and see inside the Stepmom Side community, I didn't know that other stepmoms felt the way that I did. I thought all this time I thought I was crazy, but turns out like what I was experiencing was totally normal. It was almost like a weight had been lifted off of me because I felt like I went from no one understands what I'm going through. No one gets me. I'm crazy, and I'm sure you hear this too from your friends, like, well, I would never date somebody with kids, or why don't you just leave, or whatever. Yeah, that's great. I wish I could just leave, but I actually happen to love the person that I'm with. It's just like the outside stuff that I don't love. And so when I found out that like, yeah, almost every other stepmom feels like this, I was like, wait, what? Oh, okay, so it's not just me. Okay, that's good to know. So let's talk about why I started coaching, because that's where this whole thing really started for me. The exact moment I realized stepmoms needed coaching was when I got outside help. I didn't ever realize like how hard I was struggling, but I also didn't realize that there was someone specifically for stepmoms to help them navigate through these things. I thought that I was just like up the creek without a paddle. And so like I said, if you're like me, you probably don't ask for help easily, and admitting that you need help, that's even harder. So yeah, going to marriage counseling was like not my favorite thing. And then it was my favorite thing when she was like, oh yeah, your husband's doing this wrong and that wrong and that wrong and this wrong and blah, blah. And I've talked about this before too. But then she was like, okay. And she turned her chair to me and she was like, okay, Alicia, let's talk about you. I was like, well, what do you mean? Let's talk about me. I'm perfect. I have never been married. I don't have any kids. I'm good. But then that's when I found out like childhood stuff showed up. If you hear like a jingling noise, it's because Dusty, our dog, is up here and her little tags are like jingling around. So that's what's happening. So if you hear like that, like a sneeze, like background noise, like that's definitely her. Anyway, but when I felt like I'd finally gotten to the other side of being a stepmom, like the other side meaning like things didn't set me off as easily. I felt like I could finally like control my emotions, or I felt like I could see the bigger picture. I wasn't so in the weeds. I wasn't so easily getting my feelings hurt. I wasn't so triggered or activated or whatever word you'd like to use this week to talk about how all of the things that are pissing you off about a stepmom. Once I got to the other side of like, okay, these things aren't pissing me off as much or as fast as they have been. Like maybe I could do this. Maybe I could start coaching. And like, that was really exciting for me because I'm like, I know that I can help stepmoms. Even if it was just one stepmom to start, like I'm in. And I know how isolating it felt when I was going through the hard times of being a stepmom. I felt like no one got me, no one understood what I was going through. So I was like, even if I just help one stepmom, like this is the best feeling because that person that helps me, I knew had helped many stepmoms, but for me, like she helped me. And so I was like, I want to go and help somebody else and have them feel that too. Like I'm helping her. But honestly, the pain point that pushed me into coaching was feeling like an outsider in my own home. That's something that almost every single stepmom I talk to struggles with, but doesn't realize until they finally have the words to describe it. I didn't realize that I felt so weird in this house until I heard that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what's happening to me. Oh my gosh, that's exactly where I am. And so when I started helping stepmoms, I was like, okay, I want to help them ditch that outsider feeling, set boundaries, and feel confident in their home. And so that's how I explain it. Like with the coaching that I do, I'm going to help you ditch that outsider feeling, set some boundaries because, girl, we all know that whatever's happening isn't working. And then also like just feel confident in your own home. A lot of times I see stepmoms just don't have the confidence to navigate whatever it is that they're navigating. And so we work on building confidence. And I love that. Like I love when somebody starts with me and they're one way, and then at the end of working with me, they are a completely different person. I'm like, oh yes, my work here is done. So coaching was working, but I realized something else. Coaching is an expense that not everyone can afford. It is expensive. Like the work that goes into it, it's expensive. It's very time consuming. So that's when I created the Stepmom Side Community. I wanted to help more than just a few stepmoms or just that one stepmom. I wanted there to be a place where stepmoms could come and join and have the community feel without breaking the bank. So for the Stepmom Side Community, you can join monthly, you can join annually, or some stepmoms just come for a few months at a time, like when they need help, and then they leave. And that doesn't hurt my feelings. So like if you join and then you're like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to join for like a month, 2 months, whatever, just to like get through whatever. And then you leave. Totally fine. I've had stepmoms do that. They come in, stay for a while to work through whatever it is, and then they leave again. Totally cool. But most importantly, you're here inside the Stepmom Side Community getting the help that you need. Now, let me tell you, imposter syndrome didn't just show up for me as a stepmom. I'm going to repeat that again for you. Imposter syndrome didn't just show up for me as a stepmom. It showed up when I was thinking about, when I launched, when I opened this community as well. I was like, I don't think anyone's going to show up. At that point, I had only coached. Who was going to like pay me to help them through things like daily, like to have the support basically 24/7. Like who was going to pay me for that? No one. That's what I thought. Like in my head, I'm like, who are you to be doing this. You don't know anything about tech. You don't know anything about building a website. You don't know anything about community. Like, what are you doing? But here I am, over 4 years into coaching and a little over 3 years into having the Stepmom Side Community. Actually, more than that. It'll be 4 years in December. And I still remember the first stepmom that signed up. She's still in the community. Hi, Rachel, if you're listening to this, because I know you are. She's been with me like through moving platforms. I was on one platform and then moved to a different platform. That was a pain in the ass. I'm just going to be honest with you. It was a pain in the ass to go from like one platform to another. So she was with me through that whole entire thing. I watched her go from a childless stepmom, meaning that she didn't have kids of her own, to a new mom, to now she's got 2 kids. And so it blows my mind that like I still get to like see her and like cheer her on, like all of the things. Like, and honestly, I'm like, cheer her on. A lot of times it's just pep talks of like, hey, you know what? This part of being in the stepmom role right now in your life sucks and is really hard. Like it can be so hard, and there's different challenges. There's different seasons of stepmom life. But the thing that gets me the most is when a new stepmom joins, and within a few hours, maybe a few minutes, depending on how ambitious she is, she posts something, and then the other stepmoms reply, and then that new member comments something like, oh my gosh, I didn't know others felt the same way, or I feel so seen or so validated. I've been looking for this. Like that right there, that's my why for building the Stepmom Side Community. And here's the thing, if you're thinking about joining the Stepmom Side Community, when you sign up, it asks for your name, but then you can go in and change your name to whatever it is that you want it to be on there. You can have it be your initials, you can have it be Cloud Hopper, you can have it be whatever it is that you want. Like I was in a community years and years and years ago, the Stepmom Side Magazine's community, and my handle in there was working on it, because that's literally like how I felt, was like, I'm working on it. Like I'm not perfect, but I'm working on this, and it sucks. It's really freaking hard. So same thing here for the Stepmom Side Community. When you join, it's your name, but please feel free to go back in and like change it. You don't have to out yourself, or if you're like, hey, I want to keep it as my name, totally cool too. So now let's talk podcasting, because if you know me, you know I'd rather record an episode than make a social media post. Honestly, to be completely frank with you, I do not like the social media hamster wheel of like create content, create content, create content, create content. No, I'd rather fork my eye out. Like absolutely not. But you want me to sit down and record podcast episode after podcast episode after podcast episode? Absolutely. Because here's why. I feel like podcast episodes are so much more freaking helpful, so much more valuable than whatever post you see on social media. Yes, podcast episodes last a lot longer. You know, they vary in however long, but their shelf life is a lot longer, right? Like you can come back and listen to this podcast episode for forever, where you're probably not going to go back and search for that social media post. So I had been wanting to do a podcast for a while. I'd been talking about it, I'd been toying with the idea, but my stepson actually was the one that bought me a microphone for Christmas the year before I started podcasting. So I started the podcast July of 2023. So he bought me a podcast microphone December of 2022. Do you realize how long it took me to start? But he knew I'd been toying with the idea. But of course, again, that imposter syndrome crept in. I thought things like, who's going to listen? You know, who's going to listen? Who do you think you are recording a podcast and giving out advice? And then like the one thing that always got me was, what do you think insert person will think? Whether it's my family, my husband's family, my stepkids, their mom, like what are they going to think? And then finally, I just said to myself, you know what? I want to start this before my birthday, right? So I had gotten the microphone December of 2022. And then I'd been thinking about it. And I was like, I just need to do this. Like, I need to have some sort of deadline. Otherwise, I'm not going to do this. I don't know if you operate like that, but I absolutely operate like that. Like, if I don't have a deadline, this is not getting done. If it is not scheduled, this is not getting done. And that's the scariest thing of just like putting things on your calendar and being like, okay, this is when I'm going to do this. And then I was like, you know what? Oh, here's the crazy thing. I don't ever think I've talked about this, but I started recording podcast episodes March of 2023. Like actually started batch recording them because I was like, okay, I need to start doing this. And I didn't know if I was going to do like more solo podcast episodes, more guest episodes. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was just going to try to wing it, but I wanted to have podcast episodes in the bank. So if it came time for me to like record a podcast episode or like release a podcast episode, I had a podcast episode that I could just put out and like already have and not be stressed about it. So March 2023 is when I started to batch record them. But listen to this. My very first podcast episode ever that I recorded was December of 2022 with Amy Porterfield. I was a member of her book launch team, 2 weeks notice, and that was the first podcast episode I had ever recorded. How about this? How about here I am talking to Amy Porterfield, someone I absolutely love, and I have my Zoom set up and I had my configuration wrong. Like somehow, I have no idea how this happened, but for whatever reason, because I had just gotten my microphone, my microphone was also set as like the speaker. And so when she would talk, because the speaker was set as my microphone, I couldn't hear her. And I'm like, this is insane. And I know that she's busy and has all the things going on. And so we had to reschedule. And I was just like, I'm such an idiot. So then the next time I got to actually chat with it and record with her, it was like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. It was totally my fault. Here's what happened. And she was so gracious. Like she's absolutely wonderful. Anyway, back to, I wanted to have this done before my birthday. My birthday is in August. So I had started recording podcast episodes, but I was like, oh my gosh, I had built this up in my head. And it's so easy. But I had made having a podcast so much harder than it needed to be. I'd built it up in my head. But now, like I said earlier, like it's my preferred method of content creation. I'd rather sit down and record a podcast episode than social media posts. And here I am, a little over 2 years in with almost 50,000 podcast downloads. It's still crazy to me. There are people from 96 countries, and if you're counting cities, but like who's counting, almost 3,500 cities have downloaded and listened to this podcast episode. I mean, not this podcast episode, but the Stepmom Side Podcast. Like that is freaking crazy to me. And here's the thing. When I record the podcast episodes, I want it to be like an intimate chat. I try to make it feel like I'm talking specifically to one person, like you, and not every single stepmom. And it's a way to have a conversation about, or have conversations about being a stepmom without it feeling like a taboo topic. Like one thing that I've really gotten a lot of feedback on recently was about like throwing your partner's past in their face and like fighting about that. Like I got so much feedback on that. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that other stepmoms felt like that. Listen, not only do other stepmoms feel like that, but like I did the exact same thing for a really, really, really long time. Another question I get is, how do you get like podcast topic ideas? And I usually get the topic ideas or episode ideas from either the Stepmom Side Community coaching calls that I've been going through recently or my DMs. I just ask myself, like, what have I recently been talking about? And then I turn that into a podcast episode because I see like common themes. So like I said, like you see common themes like over the 2 years that I've been podcasting. It's because there are themes that I'm seeing like pop up in my social media or in the community or in my coaching. And I'm like, okay, let me just go ahead and put a podcast episode about this. And then obviously like around the holidays too, like it tends to be more towards like whatever is going on that way. So if you're brand new to the Stepmom Side Podcast and you're wondering like where to start, I would absolutely start at episode number 1. I had done an Ask Me Anything on Instagram and answered those questions. I wasn't as like open, I would say, about things as I could have been. I'm a lot more open about things now, but I was like, again, I don't know who's listening to this. What are they going to think? Like, is anyone even going to listen? Like, what's happening? So, again, there's common themes throughout the 2 years that I've been podcasting, but that first one really kind of sets the stage of like, what we talk about. Like I don't talk about just stepmom things. It's primarily what I talk about on here, but it's not just that. So here's my why. In coaching, in the community, in this podcast, it all comes back to this. You, my friend, if you are multitasking, please come back to me. You are not alone in how you feel. Most other stepmoms feel the way that you do too. But the thing is, you think you're the only one alone on Stepmom Island. Stepmom Island meaning you're the only one that's there like struggling and you're like, help me, I'm lost. Nope, you're not the only one that's there. You could switch places with any other stepmom and it would be the same way. The way you're being treated is not because of you specifically, it's because of the role that you're in and what you represent. Like you and I could switch places. I could go to your house. You could come to my house. How you're treated at your house is how I would be treated at your house. How I'm treated at my house is how you would be treated at my house, right? So we could switch places and it would all be the same. But here's the thing. The magic happens when you learn how to navigate tricky situations and tricky people, right? Because you know that it's going to happen. It's very cyclical. Like these things always come up. And that magic happens when you learn how to navigate those things. Kind of like I'd said at the beginning, like I kept doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. You already know what that's the definition of. That's the definition of insanity. So when you're ready and open for support, please come join us inside the Stepmom Side community. I would love to see you in there. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And thanks for letting me share my why with you. I will chat with you next week. Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Krasko. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side Community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.